Welcome to The Point of View. This is your favorite current affairs show here on Channel 1 Television. On The Point of View, we pick the right topics and bring you the right interviews or the more insightful analysis. Tonight's a special night because it's a day since the inauguration of John Dramani Mahama as the president of Ghana, taking over from Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. So we'll be giving you a short political history of Ghana and looking at the quality of our democracy and analyzing why the Fourth Republic has been the most resilient since we became a country. It's going to be quite interesting. Stay with us.
Fire pomudi ni agubio Ghana fueni age efri say ya your local spices na ya frafra dia ya sankofa natural spice
me de gumi jollof mu ni mi sti wa hodoma e ma ne dance
Stanley the barbecue the go on
sankofa natural spices and one you use 100% natural said the yepen
Adofo mamunye huge mistake sankofa natural spices the
FDA agi ejedi nkratu yatu.
So welcome back. So tonight we're taking you on a short journey of Ghana's elections, Ghana's politics, Ghana's history. We've had 13 presidents, with John Mahama being the 13th. So prior to his coming in the second time, we've had 12 leaders. Now, they've all been men. 5 of them have been soldiers. 7 of them have been non-soldiers. Tonight, we'll tell you all about that. Now, we'll also talk about the quality of Ghana's democracy, because when Mahama was inaugurated yesterday, over 20 heads of state visited. Clearly, Ghana is doing something right. But we need to know where we've come from and how we got here. And this particular show will start from colonialism, because the systems we practice today all had to come in after the interruption of our development by colonialists. So this is a very important starting point. Why is it? Because everywhere you see blue is where France colonized countries. Everywhere you see orange is where Britain colonized countries on the continent. Of course, there are other places like the Belgian Congo in the middle there, where you had Belgium being the main colonizer. There are 2 countries on the continent with no colonial masters, Ethiopia and Liberia. Why is this important? Because as you would find out later on, the kind of colonialists you had has a lot to do with the system you choose. For example, the British, they use something called indirect rule. It means that if a British came to a place like northern Nigeria and the Emir of Kano was very powerful, they would rule through the Emir. If they found out that the traditional leaders in the central region of Ghana were very powerful, they would rule through the traditional leader. But in France, they use something they call the policy of assimilation. So the French states, a lot of them were colonized and had independence at the same time. The nature of their relationship with their colonial master has a lot to say about the kind of system they run. Now, Ghana is critical because in West Africa, there were only 4 English-speaking countries. Nigeria, colonized by the British, the Gold Coast at the time, Sierra Leone, and then the Gambia. Liberia was never colonized properly, so-called. A lot of the Anglophone countries, apart from Egypt and Sudan, are mostly in the south. And all of this was after the Berlin Conference, where the Europeans had to slice and dice African countries. Now, take note of the countries in green. Now, these countries were colonized by Germany. Togo, Cameroon, what is now known as Namibia, and then what is known as Tanzania. When Germany lost the World War, other colonial powers decided to take their booty. So, for example, the French took Togo. Cameroon was split into English and French. So there's a part of Cameroon that speaks English, but they are mostly French. And of course, the Tanzania and Namibia also became English speaking. All right. And then we have a few Portuguese, Angola, Mozambique. And then, interestingly, everywhere Italy colonized is having challenges. So you had Somalia and then you had Libya, are the 2 places where Italy colonized. So this is a very important place to start from. Now, let's talk now about Ghana's political history in terms of the key milestones. Now, in 1896, the British came up with a very interesting law. They called it the Crown Lands Act, which wanted to take over our lands for the crown, which was at the time run by the British monarchy. And some Ghanaian chiefs and some Ghanaian elite formed an organization called the Aborigines Rights Protection Society. And they said no, they were not going to agree. So they actually traveled to the UK to go and argue at the House of Commons against this particular law. So it was the Crown Lands Bill and the Lands Bill of 1896. Some of the prominent Ghanaians or Gold Coasters who led this, of course, John Mensah Saba, we know him, who is renowned as the first lawyer in Ghana. And then we had the likes of Jacob Wilson Say, J.W. de Graaf Johnson, J.P. Brown, and J.E. Kesley Hayford. The name Kesley Hayford keeps coming up in our history, right? So one of the reasons why places like Zimbabwe, Zambia, South Africa, and even Kenya have a lot of their land controlled by the British was that they did not have these guys. These guys argued with just one generation of education in Britain against this Crown Lands Act. So if you want to understand our democracy and why we are doing very well, we need to remember the Aborigines Rights Protection Society. So John Say, John Mensah Saba, de Graaf Johnson, Kesley Hayford, and J.P. Brown. These guys are heroes. Some of them are in this shot. So you need to understand that Ghana's history is not just about politicians. These were educated lawyers, educated business people, and traditional rulers who formed the Aborigines Rights Protection Society. Nkrumah later joined the society as well. Okay. Now, prior to independence in 1957, there was a major thing that happened in Ghana. In 1948, some veterans who had come from the world wars in the 45-46 period felt that they were not being well treated. And we all know about what happened. The 1948 Crossroads shooting, Odate, and then Ajete and Co. They were shot, and it led to a lot of agitation in 48. In 49 as well, there was a lot of agitation with the boycotts. Kwame Nkrumah's Accra Evening Post was quite a prominent newspaper in the time. With all the agitations in town, Nkrumah was arrested together with the Big Six, and they were put in prison and blamed for the happenings which led to those agitations in 49. Of course, Nkrumah himself had left the UGCC the year before to form the CPP, but they were arrested and bundled together in prison. Now, with all the agitations going on and Nkrumah being kept in Jamestown prison, there was an election that was being held, right? And because Nkrumah was domiciled at the Jamestown prison in Ashiedu Keteke, he ran on the CPP ticket as member of parliament for that area against Jacob Echebilamte's father, who's the senior of Echebilamte. Nkrumah won quite handsomely. So here he is being brought out of prison and being celebrated for winning the election. 28 February is a key period in Ghana because this was 1948 shootings. This is the Big Six. Kwame Nkrumah, flanked by the father of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, who is the Akufo-Addo in the middle. And then you had Obechebilamte Akwaje, and then J.B. Dankwa. So this is Akufo-Addo's father, J.B. Dankwa. And then Ken Ofori-Atta's, of course, one of his uncles. All right. So there's Ofori-Atta, there's Akwaje, and then there's Kwame Nkrumah himself. So this is a very important part of our history. And later on, to understand why our democracy is unique in Africa, these agitations are critical. So there's a UGCC, which wanted independence at a much slower pace, and the CPP, which wanted independence very rapidly. Nkrumah was kicked out of UGCC, formed the CPP. He wins an election in prison. So key point, between 1951, so he's in prison in 1950. In 51, he wins an election while in prison. So he's a prison graduate. He then is invited to form a government in 1951. All right. So he wins an election for Accra Central. He becomes head of government business, and then he subsequently wins the 56 elections as well. Now, some of the people he worked with in the 51 government were carried over into the 56-57 government. So take note of some of Nkrumah's key lieutenants. So you had his friend Akwaje, part of the Big Six, who is the man the UGCC sent to speak to Nkrumah in the UK to join the UGCC. He later went with Nkrumah to CPP. And then we have Mr. Kingsley Hayford again, who was Nkrumah's communication minister at the time. Then you had Kobla Agbeli Bedema, Nkrumah's finance minister. It is written that when Nkrumah was in prison, Bedema was coordinating the CPP activities with Nkrumah. Then there's, of course, Kojobo Ochio, minister for lands, key associate of Nkrumah, even from 51 all the way through to the 56 elections as well. Some other interesting names I'll show you when I have a clearer picture. But these are Nkrumah's lieutenants and his ministers in his 57 cabinet. About half of these guys were there from 51. All right. Now this is important to understand where we've come from as a democracy, because between 51 and 56 we're not yet independent, but Nkrumah was head of government business. When we get independence in 1957, of course, we are the first country, sub-Sahara, to be independent. Although I need to say that South Africa technically got independent in 1910. This is a clearer picture, 1910. But they were still ruled by minority whites until 94. All right. Now, almost all the countries above us on the north, Egypt 1922, Libya 51, Tunisia 56, Morocco 56. So when they say Ghana is the first country sub-Saharan to get independence, it's basically saying, apart from the North African territories, from Western Sahara all the way down, of course, Ethiopia was never colonized. 1957 is the earliest any country could get independent. So you have a lot to be proud of as a Ghanaian. And again, when we talk about what happened at the Independence Square, Mahama being sworn in, everybody celebrating Ghana, we are historically a very important country. So even Nigeria, 1960, almost all the French countries, 1960 independence, okay? Come to East Africa, Kenya 63, Uganda 62, Tanzania 64. Southern Africa is even much later. Zimbabwe 65, Botswana 66. Some people say the Europeans didn't want to leave the Eastern and Southern Africa because the weather was great. But they also own a lot of land there. But don't forget, Aborigines' rights. They said, no, you can't own our land. So in addition to our intellectuals and the hard work they did, and our elite, the fact that we owned our land was critical. Some people also think the mosquito helped to drive the Europeans away. Be that as it may, Ghana has a unique place. Guinea followed in 58, Mali 1960. Indeed, Kwame Nkrumah led the formation of the Ghana-Guinea-Mali Union. All right, we're supposed to be 3 in 1, which is why when Nkrumah was overthrown, he went to Guinea to live there, and he was made a co-president. So these things are very important. So to see the Guinean president or head of state there was very important as well. So below the Sahara, we are the first, and this is very important piece of history. All right. Now, when I come to conclude about why our democracy is unique, history is a very key part, and I may come back to this slide. Another interesting point to note, when we got independence in 1957, Kwame Nkrumah looked up to Ethiopia. All right, because Ethiopia was the only properly so-called non-colonized country. And guess what? Ethiopia's flag was red, gold, and green. All right, and Nkrumah, and Ethiopia is founded 1000 BC, right? Occupied by Italy briefly, but never colonized. When Ghana chose the red, gold, green of Ethiopia, guess what? Almost all West African countries have a version of a red, gold, green flag, with the exception of Nigeria and Sierra Leone and Liberia. Almost all the countries on this stretch, from Senegal to Burkina Faso to Cameroon, all have red, gold, green, of course, except Cote d'Ivoire. Cote d'Ivoire is an interesting story. Nkrumah and Houphouët-Boigny were contemporaries and rivals. So there was no way Cote d'Ivoire was going to choose red, gold, green. They've always been sort of like two brothers arguing. But this is a very important piece of history as well. Okay, so now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to now take you through our various heads of government. Let me go back. I've already shown you the first pre-independence government of Nkrumah and his cabinet. So Nkrumah was president or prime minister 51, 56, but Ghana becomes independent 57. All right. So now let's walk through the various governments we've had. As I said, we've had 13 heads of state. Mahama being the 13th. Mahama was 11 and is 13. Of those 12 before Mahama, or as at Akufo-Addo, 7 are civilians, 5 are soldiers, and we're going to walk through how we got here. Okay, now between 1957 and 1960, even though we're independent, we're still under the Queen. So the head of state was Queen Elizabeth. So if you go to places like Canada, to an extent, some of the Caribbean islands, They are technically independent countries, but their head of state is the Queen, like in the UK. So we're not really independent. So Nkrumah was head of state or prime minister in 1957, but the Queen was still the head of state. All right. So now the reason it's important is that we are in the Fourth Republic. What's a republic? A republic is a sovereign state with a head of state that manages its own affairs, its own constitution. All right. So when the French overthrew the monarchy, they became a republic. If you are run by civilians with your own constitution, with your head of state, you are a republic. So one of the issues that have been controversial is the cancellation of July 1 as a holiday, because Ghana became a republic July 1, 1960. That's the first attempt of republic. So after 3 years of the Queen being a head of state, even though we're independent, we became a proper country. Self-determination in its full sense in 1960, July 1. There's still a debate about whether we should go back to July 1 as a holiday. Of course, the MPP government changed this. This July 1 is no longer a holiday. Yesterday, January 7, is now Constitution Day, because the argument is that, well, July 1 came with a constitution, and that constitution was overthrown. The constitution that survived is the Fourth Republican Constitution, which came alive on January 7, 1993, and therefore we celebrate yesterday because that's the Constitution Day. But I still think July 1 is a critical day, because in our history there's no other day like this. This is the day we took our history into our own hands. So I think we should have maintained it, but it's gone. We don't know if the NDC will bring it back. So you can say that the first government of independent Ghana was a civilian government run by Nkrumah, 3 years pre-republic, and then 6 years post-republic. Now, this is a clearer photo of some of Nkrumah's henchmen. If you've heard of some names, so this is Krobeduse. Krobeduse had a notoriety. When we were young, we were told that he became symptomatic of some of Nkrumah's problems. They claimed he had a golden beard. He became a symbol of corruption in Nkrumah's government. In fact, Nkrumah himself was shocked by some of the sleaze that he saw in his government. Akwaje is still there in happier times with Nkrumah. This is K.A. Gbedema. This is Kojobo Ochio. Arguably, two of Nkrumah's closest, together with this one. Some interesting names here. A.E. Nkumsa. This is Yeboah Afari. This man is the father of the former GGA president, Adjoa Yeboah Afari. Those of you, this is J.H. Alassani. I'm sure Willie Alassani is related to him. There are a few interesting names as well. So you have Abavana. So if you know Kotobabi Pig Farm very well, it's a place called Abavana Junction. This guy is Abavana. He was also a minister under Nkrumah. And then Kisleyford, always there. So if you look at the picture of Nkrumah during the independence with his Fugu, there are about 4 people standing next to him. He's there. Kisleyford is a very, very important, and there are so many of them. I still, there's one in the Aborigines Rights Protection Society. There's one who used to run VRA. There's one Sydney. It's a very powerful family. They've done so well for Ghana. This is a case, and they're all related. This is Kisleyford. All right. Who have I not mentioned? So we have Kwame Nkrumah himself sat in the middle. Who else is there? We have Ezwa, J.H. Ezwa. That's the name, or is it J.B. Ezwa? And then there's L.R. Abavana. This is a bit clearer. So Abavana is the guy next to Akwaje. There's Ezwa, Alassani, Yeboah Afari, and then there's N.A. Welbeck. And then there's called one Oforiata. So these are Nkrumah's guys, and the guys who are sat include A.E. Nkumsa, and then Kojobo Ochio, Kwame Nkrumah, his finance minister. So these are the cabinet of Nkrumah, all in Kente African cloth. A very strong team. The negotiation for the Akosombo Dam, Nkrumah started it. Bedema was very critical there. But this is a democratic government. All right. Now, problems began in 1962. There was an attempt to kill Nkrumah. Somebody planted a bomb. So a young girl, Nkrumah went to visit Kulungu, which is one of the places in the Upper East region. And when the young lady was handing over the flowers to Nkrumah, somebody had put a bomb in it. So it exploded. Nkrumah nearly died. Some people say that's what changed Nkrumah. So by 1964, he had banned all political parties, declared Ghana a one-party state, and declared himself president for life. Now, in addition to that, so many things were happening. Nkrumah was trying to unite Africa, traveling a lot. a lot of times in Ethiopia. And one of the periods in 1966, he was going to Vietnam because the Vietnamese were to solve a problem far away from home. He was overthrown with the help of the CIA. We know this as a fact. So he becomes president or head of state in 1960 when we became a republic. He was doing pretty well. We had tough economic times in the mid-60s. So his one-party state, Preventive Detention Act, life president, harsh economic conditions, overthrown 24 February 1966 by the NLC. He wrote a book called Dark Days in Ghana. He wrote it from Conakry, Guinea. So the first republic came to an end on 24th February 1966. All right, we are coming to why Ghana's democracy is unique and why we must celebrate what happened yesterday, because we've had uninterrupted civilian rule for 32 years. We have a lot to be proud of. Nkrumah was doing well. He had issues, but he was overthrown after 6 years of being president. You add 3 years of prime minister, almost 10 years of running the place. Now, I'll take a short break. When I come back, I'm going to go run through a series of very interesting heads of state. Basically, military, civilian, until Rawlings came. That's part of our history. We'll talk about that. Then we'll also talk about what makes the Fourth Republic so unique and why we've not had any coup since 1981, and the future of our democracy looking at our constitution. But tonight, on the point of view, we are still in the inauguration mode, so giving a quick history about Ghana and African democracy. Stay with us.
Are you tired of roaming for your medications and can't find them? Do you want to speak to a pharmacist or simply need privacy when buying your medications? Do you want your drugs to be delivered to you at the comfort of your home or office? Then it's time to download the Drugnet app, spelled DRUGNET, from the Play Store or App Store to enjoy total convenience. Use Drugnet, your multiple award-winning online pharmacy, for prompt delivery of all your medications. For further inquiries on Drugnet, call 0593-159-139 or 0501-646-496. And remember, we also accept all private health insurance cards. Drugnet, your #1 online pharmacy.
Tell me, is this thing on now? I've been working long like a marathon now. Tying up words, making them a bomb now. Tell me, we too lonely alone now. I got a message when they put it in a song now. I'll see you later, all the haters got it wrong now. We're touching the lightning, we're coming alive, yeah. We're feeling inside, yeah. We got the power.
Tank 300, where power meets elegance. Call us on 0501 772222 or 0501 773333.
Welcome back. So tonight, on a point of view, we're really taking you into a brief history of Ghana as we still remember the highlights of yesterday's inauguration, or if you like, Tuesday's inauguration of John Mahama as the 13th head of state. But in the Fourth Republic, he has a distinct role. He's been president, you can say, 3 times. All right, first time July 2012. Substantially in 2013, January 7, and now he is still head of state. Now let's go to Nkrumah overthrown 1966. Now lots of interesting things happened. Nkrumah was overthrown by 2 men. They were both generals, Lieutenant General Kotoka after whom the Kotoka Airport is named, and General Frifa. They were working in the infantry brigade in Kumasi, highly trained soldiers. When they overthrew Nkrumah, they invited General Ankara, a highly respected senior soldier, to come and head government. So Ankara, even though he was not necessarily actively part of the coup, became the head of state from 1966 for a few years before later on Frifa took over when Ankara himself had a scandal. So the three key people, so if you want to be very clear who our heads of state have been, General Ankara for the first part of this 3-year period, and then General Frifa when Ankara, after a scandal, was asked to move. All right. So Brigadier Frifa later on took over as the head of state in the National Liberation Council. That's the name of the group, the NLC, National Liberation Council. Why have I added this picture? So when Nkrumah was overthrown, here's a newspaper: Ghana coup, Nkrumah out. People are joyous. All right, people are excited when they overthrew Nkrumah. This is Kotoka. This is Frifa. This is Nkrumah's statue being dragged on the floor. So talking about statues being dragged, usually there's always euphoria when people consider a tyrant or somebody they don't like to be removed from office. So this is NLC. Now the problem with this was that Nkrumah's books were banned. CPP was proscribed. So it was not just removing Nkrumah from office. Basically, that's why a lot of people believe that this coup was not just a local issue, because Nkrumah's posturing and his ambition for Africa, his position, he was considered a Leninist. This was pre-Cold War, but there was still a big rivalry between the West and the East. All right. So the overthrow of Nkrumah was not just about changing government. It was about trying to stop the forward march of a prescient African who was really trying to hastily unite the continent. So his books were banned, his images were proscribed, his party was banned. He himself went into exile. All right. Of course, we know what Nkrumah did in terms of his development. We've seen all the things: Akosombo Dam, Kratima Motorway, almost all the big projects was Kwame Nkrumah. All right. Be that as it may, 3 years of military rule, Ankara and Frifa. Okay. What happens next? They usher in the Second Republic. This Second Republic is basically a parliamentary system. And the Progress Party of Dr. Kofi Abrefa-Busia, Infantipim trained erudite historian, or I think it's a professor. He wins that election quite resoundingly because PCPP was nowhere to be found. They were all chased out. Dr. Kofi Abrefa-Busia was prime minister because we were running a parliamentary system. But guess what? Edward Akufo-Addo, part of the Big Six, Akufo-Addo's father, the former president's father, was the head of state ceremonial. Afrifa was head of Prudential Commission. So there's a view that this was a government friendly to the military that overthrew Nkrumah. And of course, Busia himself was quite opposed to Nkrumah's approach and style. All right. Now, the Progress Party won 105 out of 140 seats. So that was a massive victory for them. And he had less than 3 years in office. Now, what happened? There was a lot of economic hardship. One of the things Busia did that cost him was that he devalued the Ghana currency by nearly 45% in 1971. And when he devalued the currency, people were unhappy with him. General Ignatius Kutu Echampong took advantage of the discontent in town. And what did he do? Of course, this is Busia after his inauguration. Nice man. They call him a gentleman's gentleman. He had problems with things like the Aliens Compliance Act and then some other issues. But this is Busia. Achampong takes advantage of the discontent in town over the devaluation and economic hardships and overthrows Busia. Achampong himself, of course, Busia is from Wenchi in Bono. Achampong is from Trabuum in Ashanti. By the way, Frifa is also from Mampong. So there are some ethnic issues going on there, but I won't go there yet. Achampong led the coup. In his first few years, he does very well. Now, because of the devaluation of Busia, Ghana owed a lot of money. Achampong said, basically, we don't have money, we won't pay. He starts Operation Feed Yourself. It's going very well. So he starts well. But there was still a lot of corruption. There was a lot of kalabule. But what makes Achampong unpopular is he tries to change the political system by proposing a so-called unigov. So basically, chiefs, military people, we should all come together and form a uni-government so that we will not have these partisan thing. It won't work, it won't help us. People opposed it. It's like, no, unigov is not what you want, because they felt it was the military trying to perpetuate themselves in government. So Achampong was unpopular, but his unpopularity coincided with economic hardships. So the NRC, which is the government he was leading, later became the SMC. So National Redemption Council became the Supreme Military Council, all right, which he still headed. But when his number 2, General Akufu, realized that Achampong is getting unpopular, we have to make change. They was already going to have elections. So Akufu led a palace coup to basically say, bro, you stay home and let's do the work, okay? So General Akufu, who's here, led a palace coup, which was a bloodless coup in 1978. So Achampong had ruled from 72 to 78, 6 years. And Akufu took over as Achampong's number 2, became number 1. And then, so he was overthrown on 5th July 1978, overthrown by a military coup led by General Fred Akufu, who's from Kropong. So this, a BA man, an Ashanti man, and a Kwapim man. Quite interesting indeed. This gives a better picture of the situation, because when he was overthrown, because the palace coup, no gun, no shooting. By the way, Achampong's coup was also a bloodless coup. So Achampong's overthrow of Buzia was not a gidi coup. So Akufu is the head of state after July 6, 1978. And here is Achampong. He was larger than life, really liked guy. Here's his military council. Of course, Achampong, Akufu, Afrifa will all face their death a year after, right? Because there were elections to have happened. If I go back here, elections were to have happened in 1979. But what happened? May 15, there was a very, very chaotic scene in Burma camp where junior officers basically led a mutiny. Mutiny basically means they will not obey their seniors in the ranks. They have access to weapons. They are going to cause chaos. Rawlings was arrested on May 15 and he was tried, found guilty of treason. The soldiers were so angry they released Rawlings, and Rawlings, in that famous broadcast, "Release my men, I'm the one you want," Rawlings becomes the hero. So Akufu takes over from Achampong, tries to restore some credibility. Rawlings and his guys deal a fatal blow to that whole system. So by May 15, there's an insurrection. Junior soldiers break into Rawlings' jail, remove him. Rawlings says, "Leave my men." And people like Boachijan, himself from the German area, and Rawlings and a couple of others were the leaders of that Armed Forces Revolutionary Council, AFRC. These are the guys who removed SMC2, led by Achampong. This was the time of the infamous "Let the Blood Flow." People were so angry. But in those days, soldiers are in power. Young soldiers have taken over from them. No ballot box. There was a bullet. Now, this is a very wild picture taken from, I think it's Burma camp. Rawlings is the chairman. He executes 3 former heads of state. So Afrifa is killed, Achampong is killed, Akufu is killed. Many generals are killed. We don't want to remind the families. But June 16, 1979 was a very bloody day. A lot of these guys were not tried. They were killed because of the anger in the system. Right? Of course, when Kufuor won the election in the year 2000, that's why they formed the National Reconciliation Commission, because the atrocities of the 79 period still haunt. There are families that have been impoverished because of that. And that's why there are people who cannot stand Rawlings. This is part of our bloody history. All right. Now, because Achampong and the Kufu were already planning elections, Rawlings and his people described this mutiny as a house cleaning, but that the elections would happen. So imagine being a journalist in 1979 writing for the Ghanaian Times. People like Elizabeth Ohini, they wrote very bold articles at the peril of their lives, right? Which is why they are respected so much in this profession. So you have the elections that were interrupted by the mutiny, happened in 1979. So after the June 4 uprising and all the craziness that happened, this is Rawlings and his lieutenants in Burma camp. He hands over power to the Third Republic. So you see, First Republic in Nkrumah, 1960, lasts for 6 years. Second Republic, Busia, 69 to 72. Elections are held, and this scholar from Golu, Hilali Man, he was heading Ghana's foreign affairs desk in Switzerland, PhD holder in international affairs, educated at Sorbonne, eloquent in English and French, astute northern leader. So you see, before Mahama, Bawumia, all of that, there was Liman. All right. Now, Liman won the election that the mutiny was to have interrupted. So this is Rawlings as head of AFRC, shaking Liman's hand and basically saying, well, we've cleaned the house, so come and now do what you want to do. And Liman was from a different party from Busia or Nachampong. He won a fair election. Now, if you read Professor Daya Mensah, his argument is that Liman did a lot. For example, there was a lot of hunger in Ghana in 79, 80. Liman replenished our food stocks. He did some good work. He wasn't allowed to say. In fact, some people advised Liman to make sure Rawlings was retired from the army and sent out of Ghana, because the person who did a coup like that or led such an insurrection with all these hungry soldiers, if he's in town, you can't have peace. Somehow Rawlings was in town. All right. So between 1979, 24 September, when Liman was sworn in, so Liman was in office fully for the whole of 1980. All right. He was in office for the whole of 1981 up until 31st December, when Rawlings comes back and says, look, things are not moving the way we want things to move. So Rawlings comes back again to overthrow Dr. Hila Liman in a bloodless coup. So this time, Liman is not as if they came to do. The main brutality was in the 79 area. So Liman was overthrown. Rawlings declares a holy war because of economic decay. So in a sense, the mutiny was about the corruption of the military guys. Liman was not corrupt. He was not accused of corruption. Liman's only problem was that he wasn't given time to do his work. So a lot of people feel like Rawlings' second coming was illegitimate. So if these people like Kweku Baako, they say to you, look, when Rawlings came in 79, we all supported what he did because we all knew that the system was rotten. But interrupting Liman in 1981 was not justified, which is why some people disagree with the PNDC. All right, so Rawlings comes in 31st December, which is why they have the 31st December women's movement led by Nana Konedu. It used to be a holiday. Of course, it was sent to court and they said it cannot be a holiday. Rawlings was to stop economic decay. He says civilians will participate in governance. One of the things he did though was that PNDC brought people from both sides of political divide, because there's been CPP and UGCC. So, for example, the Speaker of the first Parliament was from the UP tradition. Well, someone from the UP tradition. Even Kufuor worked briefly under PNDC, and there were also people from the CPP tradition. So even Dr. Bawumia's father was in the PNDC. All right. So between 1981, 31st December, all the way to the end of 1992, Chairman Rawlings was the head of state as a military ruler. All right. Chairman Rawlings was the head of state as a military ruler. Now, let's summarize so far what we know. Between independence and 1992, we had only 13 years of democracy, 22 years run by soldiers. The 13 years, 3 years of, what's his name, Nkrumah, prior to independence, 57 to 60. 60 to 66, 9 years. So 9 years for Nkrumah, 2 years or 2.5 years for Busia, 2.5 years for Liman. The rest, all soldiers. And LC, 3 years under Afrifa and Ekufu. Achampon, 71 all the way to 79 with Ekufu. Almost 9 years of military rule, plus 11 years of Rawlings. So as of 1992, before this constitution came, soldiers had been in power for 22 years and civilians had been in power for only 13 years. So this is the situation that the fourth Republican Constitution came to meet. All right. And I think it's an important junction. All right. So let's move on quickly now. So what do we have? Rawlings then is convinced to agree to hand over power, but to himself. But basically they said, look, you've done 10 years of stabilization. Let's allow political parties to run elections. Let's come up with a constitution. He agrees to this. But the constitution will have term limits. 4 years, you can go twice. After that, you can't go anymore. He agrees. But he saw it done 11 years. Okay, so he agrees to this. And the 92 constitution is born. Which constitution gives us Rawlings for 8 years. He wins an election in 92 against Edu Bahin, 96 against Kufuor. And by the year 2000, he was term limited. So Mills comes in 2000 as Rawlings' vice president to run against Kufuor, and Kufuor wins the election. So this constitution that we celebrate today was born out of this thing. So a lot of people feel that the constitution gives too much power to the president. Well, they had to do it that way because that was the only way he was going to agree that he would not be a military ruler, because he wanted absolute power. He was a military leader. So a military leader now voted for in 92 for 4 years, voted again in 96, but by 2000 his term was over. So what happens? Kufuor wins an election, and for the first time, so Kufuor is the first man to win an election as an opposition leader officially. So that's a record. Everybody who has won an election is either competing against people who are, so for example, Liman won an election, but there was no opposition. They were all opposition. All right. Buzia, you can say, was favored by the government. Nkrumah was not opposition. So this is the first man. So which is why they say the year 2000 was a shifting point for Ghana. First time somebody has won an election against a government in power. And he won after 2 rounds. The second round, he won massively. So this is very important for Ghana. John Agyekum Kufuor, at his second attempt, beats John Evans Atta Mills resoundingly after 2 rounds of elections to become the first transition president of the 4th Republic. Rawlings does 8 years. Kufuor gets his first 4 years. He wins a second term in 2004. He also does 8 years. So Ghana is doing well so far. What's going on? Then 2008, Kufuor also cannot go anymore. So what does he do? Akufo-Addo is his foreign minister. He is the one who's won the MPP ticket. Some people think Kufuor wanted Alan. Be that as it may. Mills had lost in 2000, had lost in 2004, but NDC put him up again in 2008. And he, in the first round, it was very close. Akufo-Addo was actually leading. But Mills wins the second round by a very thin margin, less than 50,000 votes. And so Ghana has a second change in government. So from NDC to MPP, MPP back to NDC. The whole world is impressed. Obama comes to town after he's voted in 2008 to say, look, Ghana is building a democracy we can be proud of. So John Fifi Evans Atta Mills becomes our president as the 3rd president of the 4th Republic. Starts very well, unfortunately dies in office July 2012. So he has to be replaced by John Dramani Mahama, his vice president, to finish his unexpired term, July to December. Elections are held, John Mahama wins. John Mahama is credited as the first person after Rawlings in the 4th Republic to win an election at his first attempt. Because Kufuor tried it twice before he won. Mills tried it 3 times before he won. Akufo-Addo tried it many times. Mahama wins in 2012. It's disputed. They go to court. The court upholds the decision. But in 2016, after 4 years of being president, he loses massively because he was vice president for 4 years, president for 4 years. He loses to Akufo-Addo. All right, we know the story now. So Mahama loses and then runs in 2020. 2020, he loses again. He also goes to court. And then 2024 he comes. But between 2016 and 2024, Akufo-Addo is president. So he's also won 2 terms. All right. Now, so this is our story until yesterday. When we come back, I'll tell you what yesterday means for our democracy. Because now we've done 3 decades of the same constitution. The first constitution didn't last for 10 years. Second one didn't last for 3 years. Third one didn't last for 3 years. This one has lasted for 30. What is the reason? So when we come back, I'll show you. But this is the third coming of the 4th John. All right, so this is the third coming of 4th John. There he is. President in 2012 to 2016, back in the hot seat in 2025. When we come back, I'll tell you what this means and why this constitution has lasted. But he wins close to 60% of the vote. The only person who won elections like that was Rawlings. Unbelievable. Close to, it's 58, we are told, around 57. Very high indeed. All right. So this is the third, I call it the third coming. It's the 4th John. John 1 is Rawlings. John 2 is Kufuor. John 3 is Mills. This is John 4. And he's coming for the third time in 2025. So the third coming of the 4th John in the 2025. And it's also the 5th. So it's the 3rd and 5th. Very interesting numbers indeed. So when we come back, we'll talk about why this is unique and what has made this constitution last and what we need to do. So far, I hope you are getting some history. This is the point of view, special edition. Stay with us.
Who are you? Who are you? Charlie, I'll be you from the future. Who doesn't sleep on that slice of bread you call mattress anymore? Don some slippers, then follow me.
It is part of the mattress we did the front there.
Yeah?
That'll be the mattress where the dead for time.
Wait, what are you doing? Wow! No damage at all. Not only durable, but also super comfortable. Come on, try it.
Nothing day like ash foam. Enjoy full body support and unparalleled comfort for a restful sleep.
Don't forget your keys.
Get the premium sleep experience with mattresses from Ash Foam. Visit any of our showrooms nationwide or at ashfoam.com.
Do you want a healthy smile?
Considering oral surgery? Hi, I'm Tanya from Bethel Dental Clinic, Ghana. Whether you need a routine extraction or a complex dental implant procedure, you want a dental team that provides compassionate care with superior outcomes. A thorough diagnosis is the first step, which involves dental x-rays to assess your condition. This ensures that you're fully informed and comfortable with the plan you choose. Understanding what to expect during the recovery period is also important. By following these steps, you'll be well prepared to recover smoothly and avoid complications. Learn more about surgical services and schedule your consultation today. Bethel Dental Clinic, the smile starts here.
Healthy smile.
Life is a celebration of moments. Big and small.
The sun is scorching, I'm feeling the heat.
With Piva Drink, every moment becomes a refreshing celebration. From the beach to your home, in every corner of your world, Piva Drink adds a burst of refreshment.
Give me Piva pop too, and tangerine.
Celebrate every moment with Piva Drink. Refreshment for every occasion. Piva Drink, a taste you will love.
P for Piva.
This advert is FDA approved.
Welcome back. So we're talking about the third coming of the 4th John because he's the 4th John, but he's also the 4th head of state of the 4th Republic because there's Rawlings, there's Kufuor, there's Mills. Then he was the 4th in 2012. Akufo-Addo is the 5th, and he's also the 6th now. So a lot of interesting numbers there. Now, unique picture. So this is 2012 when Mills dies and he's sworn in July. She's in black. This was done in front of Parliament. Very sober indeed. So the first time he did the swearing in, Justice Georgina Wood, in front of a Parliament in the year 2012. 2012. All right. This is the election he won in 2012. So this is 2013, January 7. Independence Square. He's wearing white. He's being sworn in. And then this is yesterday under a different Chief Justice. So same Chief Justice did this by a different Chief Justice, Georgina Wood, and now you have Gertrude Tokonu. So this is John 1, John 2, John 3. Quite a unique situation with him. The other issue which I find interesting is we've not checked all, but it seems to be one of the swearing-ins with a lot of heads of state visiting. What makes Ghana unique? Transition is very good. We have a Transition Act which gives at least a month to transition. So immediately Bawumia realizes he wasn't going to win. He calls John Mahama and concedes less than 14 hours after the election. Unprecedented in terms of the speed. Bawumia gained a lot of points there. This is John and Akufo-Addo after the election results are officially known. Transition begins. This is the beginning of transition. This is the end of the transition meeting. Look how they are laughing. Calls him Johnny. A lot of countries have. This is our first female vice president. First public university to be headed by a woman, UCC here. She's now our first female vice president. Unprecedented as well. So a lot of countries don't have it this way. All right. Look at the way they are happy. You wouldn't even know they were campaigning against each other before. He's smiling. Look. I don't even know what they are discussing. But it's good for the country. It's very good for the country. Okay. Akufo-Addo said something. He says, we started 8 years ago. We are back here again. Very nice. Look at the kind of people who have come. For Nyasingbe is here. All right. You have Paul Kagame, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Burkina Faso, Senegal. 21 heads of state. All very proud that Ghana is doing something right. All right. So how great is our democracy? I'm going to give you 3 maps to explain something. Our democracy is great not only because of this beautiful transition or this, but because of this. Okay, so this is The Economist in 2023. They did a almost 100-page analysis of democracy in the world. Everywhere you see red or orange or yellow is bad. Everywhere you see blue is good. They are basically saying a country which is blue is a proper democracy. So the best democracies are in the Scandinavian areas. Norway, Sweden, Iceland, Ireland, Greenland. Canada is also fairly good. So full democracy, 9 and 10. Flawed, 7 and 6. So if you look on African continent, there are only about 6 countries with blue. Southern Africa, Namibia, and then Zambia, or I think Botswana. Ghana is the only democracy in all of this. All these guys are, what are they? Authoritarian regimes, hybrid regimes. So Ghana is the only proper democracy in all of this hybrid. Something you should be proud of. This is The Economist, by the way. So they say our democracy is flawed. That's what they say. I don't really agree with The Economist, but I think they have an interesting argument. They say a flawed democracy is a country that has free and fair elections. And even if there are problems, basic civil liberties are respected. However, there are some weaknesses in other aspects of democracy, including problems in governance and an undeveloped political culture and low level of political participation. So we are not there yet, but we are here. We are better than this, we are better than that. So this is what Economist is saying. So we, South Africa, Botswana, Mauritius, Namibia, are the only democracies, according to The Economist, on the continent. The rest are all doing something else. The rest are joking. Now, I won't just use Economist, because Economist is somebody's view. Let's come to the Africa Center for Strategic Studies, one of the most authoritative security think tanks on the continent. They also say proper democracies in Africa, Ghana, Tunisia, Namibia, Botswana, South Africa, Mauritius, Madagascar. Actually, Madagascar is not even part. So again, according to an African publication, so not even Kenya, a lot of these countries are democratizing, but we are proper democracy, according to the Africa Center for Strategic Studies. They say our elections are competitive and our democracy is better than most. So on the whole continent, look at all of these guys. The whole of West Africa, all of this, the only democracy is these guys. These guys are democratizing. Some even have conflict. Namibia, Botswana, South Africa, Mauritius. The rest are not up to our standard yet. This is an African security publication, highly respected as well. Okay. Now, they also say one of the reasons why democracy is great is because our elections are not managed elections or manipulated. They are competitive. All right. So they did an article. This is all 2024 stuff I'm giving you. So The only competitive elections apart from these three guys here is who? And then Mauritania and Senegal. So consistently across various analytical frameworks, your country Ghana is considered a great democracy. You have to be proud. That doesn't mean you've reached your zenith, but it's a very, very good indicator that your elections are competitive, both presidential and parliamentary, and you have something people can learn from. Look at that. All of these countries, and consistently. So this is my argument. This position that Ghana occupies is consistent across different metrics. The Economist puts Ghana at par with these guys. The Africa Center for Strategic Studies does the same thing, and their latest work also does this. Now, why has the Fourth Republic survived? That's my final question for today. Is the Constitution the best? Is it because Ghanaians have just repented and become better people? Why has this Constitution survived? I have about 5 reasons. Now, my first reason is because of our history. Because I've been talking about this from the beginning. Aborigines' rights protection, CPP and UGCC, our political culture. Our forefathers did a lot of work. People have died for this. We've seen the 48 riots. We've seen the shooting of Odate, Atipo, and Ajete. We've seen the jailing of Nkrumah. We've seen all those issues, right? We've seen 10 years of military. We've seen AFRC. Our history has guided us. Our founding fathers, in terms of the political culture, it may not be the best. NDC, MPP are very strong. That's the other reason. The parties are neatly divided. In some countries, parties are purely sectarian. Somehow, we've managed to get, yes, NDC, they win some place, MPP win some place, but at least evenly balanced. It helps. Now, if one party dominates and another group doesn't get anything, it leads to chaos. If the people vote purely on religion or purely on ethnicity, you have a problem. We have a mix of different reasons why people are voting. So our history is important. The Constitution itself is good. So even though we have challenges, and I know there's a debate, some people think we should change it, some people think we should amend it, some people should improve it. We must improve the Constitution. We maybe have to change it. That's my argument today. But one of the reasons why the 93 Constitution survived was that it both recognized our past, but it also painted a future. We'll do a full show on the Constitution later, but the Constitution has been resilient. I think Rawlings and Kufuor were also useful to us, because Kufuor, after winning over from Rawlings, did some really good things to solidify and consolidate what we had. So I think Rawlings and Kufuor have a special role to play in the success of the Fourth Republic. And of course, civil society, media, IDEG, IEA, CDD. There's a lot of great democracy promoting civil society and fantastic media. Joy FM in the 90s, Metro, City, TV3. Look at the way we covered the elections. Channel 1. This is part of a democracy. So we have a role to play here. We've done very well. Now, let me end with something this institution said. This is one of the most respected think tanks in the US. And I like what they said. They said, although Ghana faces many economic and political challenges, it remains a stable democratic country with a history of successful transitions, a free press. So I'm taking credit for, we are part of the democracy, so we need to be proud. An active civil society and independent judiciary. Yes. Then this was around November 2024. They said, regardless of which party wins the 2024 elections, Ghana should, or the elections should strengthen the country's democratic institutions. This is the Brookings Institution. Now, let me end with one final thing. We have a lot of work to do. So even though our democracy is great, politics is too expensive. If we don't deal with money in politics, the Fourth Republic may not survive. Partisanship is too much. We must deal with it. If people don't have food to eat, they will start eating their leaders. When people have nothing else to eat, so we have to work on poverty and inequality. We need to improve education and health. There must be SRAJ, IOCO, Special Prosecutor, all must be strengthened. We must watch the instability in the sub-region and stop applauding coup makers. who bring guns to come and embrace our president. We must not be foolish. We must know that most of the countries around us envy what we have. So instead of applauding coup makers and thinking that there are some brave people, let's work on our democracy to improve upon it, so in 50 years we can say the Fourth Republic has survived. So thank you for watching tonight's edition. It's been a lot of talking, but I hope you've learned something new. I call it Ghana, an African democracy. Please think about these things. Congratulations to the incoming president and the incoming vice president, and to all our parliamentarians. We hope 4 years will bring prosperity. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Hello and welcome to the Sports Roundup on Channel 1 TV. We are sponsored by Blue Gents Energy Drink and Budget Cash and Carry. My name is Gabi Ofe. Coming up, Vice President for Ghana Athletics issues warning to Mahama administration regarding appointment of Sports Minister. Also, outgoing Gauka President Kojo Fiano laments unattractiveness of football in Ghana to the corporate world. And Arsenal legend Ian Wright urges club to support Mikel Arteta in the winter transfer market. Let's get into the details of our stories now. We start with some athletics, and the Vice President of the Ghana Athletics, Charles Osei-Sibe, has issued a stern warning to the administration of President John Dramani Mahama regarding the appointment of the next sports minister. Now, according to Osei-Sibe, it is crucial for President Mahama to make the right choice, emphasizing that his appointment will be a pivotal first step in resetting sport in the country. His remarks come in the wake of the successful presidential inauguration held at the Black Star Square.
So the sports minister doesn't necessarily have to be aggressive. A gentleman who understands sports, a gentleman who would operate an open door policy, a gentleman who would respect every individual or every stakeholder as far as sports is concerned. For me, the biggest incentive for Ghanaians and the government is to go for a loud person, somebody who would always be seen bantering or fighting officials, engaging in unnecessary, argument. If you go back and you check the lives of the Osafomafos, the Baredus, the Senna Danswas, and the rest, even Elvis Afriankra, these were wonderful sports ministers, very calm, but they got things done. If this government makes a mistake and brings in anybody who would be seen to be overly loud, the person may not focus on delivering, and it will become an issue. We need somebody who is a manager, somebody who understands the terrain. Unfortunately, I cannot mention names. All the names you have mentioned are wonderful personalities, but you never know. The president may surprise all of us, but we need somebody who would work with federations. We need somebody who would work with all the stakeholders and deliver results to His Excellency.
Charles Osei-Sibe also urged the new administration to prioritize proper investment in athletics as the nation prepares for international competition scheduled for 2025.
So it is a fact that athletics is a matter of all. It is also a fact that internationally athletics has given Ghana the glory we want. What has renewed the nation is that Olympic medal. So I have said that it is time for us to seek for gold and glory. Now, if we want to seek for gold and glory, we need to change the narrative. We need to change the way we have done things. We need to have a national orientation where everybody, including the presidency, will understand what sport is about. Once we begin to understand what sport is about, then we will begin to consciously invest in